Yo, what's up, world? Welcome back to the channel. APW Sports signing in. Now, it won't be a Bears preview or reaction this week because the Bears are on a bye. And speaking of the Bears on a bye, this video is going to be me breaking down what I've seen so far this season. It is literally at the midway point in the NFL season, and the Bears have a bye. So I'm going to go into discussion about what I've seen, things that could happen potentially in the future, just the state of the Bears at the bye. But before I get into this, make sure you guys leave this video a like. That does help this channel to grow. And also click that subscribe button and notification bell so you will not miss a single video. But without further ado, let's dive into it.
I'm striving to get rich. That's why I always went 2 years without buying shoes and feet. Things change now. My mom hearing me with my music and she look a little proud.
Coming into this season, we all were anticipating and waiting for one thing, and that was the day that Justin Fields was named the starter. That became officially true in week 3 against Cleveland, and let's just say that game was an absolute dud. The development of Justin Fields so far this season has been a thing of beauty, of step-by-step progression each and every single week. I wasn't expecting Justin Fields to be a world beater out of the gate. You do not typically get that with rookie quarterbacks in their first year of starting. You really don't get that too often. Now, we all seen Justin Herbert last season with the Chargers, what he was able to do, but that does not happen for every single quarterback. That just does not. Even your typical greats, you have your Peyton Mannings, you have your Joe Montanas, you have even the GOAT Tom Brady himself. That just typically does not happen right out of the gate. So the expectations for me personally was not for Justin Fields to be a world beater. It's just for him to use his athleticism, continue to grow as a quarterback. Now, me personally, I'm an Ohio State fan. I was anticipating this for so long. But at the end of the day, when you look at Justin Fields, where he was against Cleveland and how the offense looked against Cleveland, to where we are now, coming off of a horrible loss last week to the Pittsburgh Steelers on Monday night, Justin Fields has been progressing each and every single week, and it's been a drastic difference between that week 3 start and where we are now. And speaking of this Bears offense, let's just face it, this Bears offense has its moments. The offense for the Bears has its moments where it looks solid. Then you have moments against Cleveland where it looks like a dud. Then you have moments against Tampa Bay where it just looks like a dud. Then you have even some moments against Green Bay where it looks like a dud. For the Bears offense to be consistent, they have to find some type of rhythm so far this season. And let's just face it, they haven't been able to find consistent rhythm with this offense. Now, you can attribute that to the offensive line not being very good in pass protection and having its own struggles of its own. You can attribute that to the offensive system not necessarily being the greatest. The play calling of the Bears certainly has not been the greatest, especially when Matt Nagy was calling plays. As we stand now, the Bears are a bad offense by the numbers. I'm not one that goes deep into the numbers because numbers, they don't lie, but they just do not tell the entire story. So I'm not really going to bring up numbers because I'm not a huge numbers guy. One thing we found is that the identity of this Bears offense is the running game. Whether it's been David Montgomery, even last week, and the time that he was until the Detroit Lions game where he was hurt, Khalil Herbert coming in for him and playing really well. Even Damian Williams in some spurts outside of COVID and the injuries, he's played solid. The identity for this Bears offense has been the running game. It has been the running game, and it's been the identity, and it is the absolute staple of this Bears offense that we've seen so far. And one thing that we have learned from this Bears offense this season, Matt Nagy is not the guy going forward. Matt Nagy is not the guy that you will want to continue to develop Justin Fields going forward. As we've seen with the whole entire situation between Dalton and Fields, where he was still trying to name Dalton the starter even after Fields playing solid games against Detroit. Let's just face it, If it wasn't for a Dalton injury and him having some missed time with the knee injury, could we possibly still be looking at a route that Andy Dalton is the Bears starting quarterback right now? It could be, but leave your thoughts in the comment section down below on that. I really want to see what you guys think, but I just believe if it wasn't for the knee injury that Andy Dalton suffered in week 2, his Bears offense could be still led by Dalton. The identity of the Bears has been the running game. The offensive line has struggled in pass protection, just to say the absolute least. They haven't been picking up the blitzes very well. They have struggled to score points on offense. I've said it in a previous video before, the Bears offense, when you watch it now, it needs a rebuild. Now, we know we have injuries to Bourne, even though he came back 2 weeks ago. We have injuries to guys like Tevin Jenkins, who hasn't played a single snap all season. We've had injuries to Montgomery. Robinson and Mooney have been battling injuries of their own. Jimmy Graham has been on the COVID list. And Montgomery has had his injuries. Herbert has had his knickknacks. Damian Williams has had his injuries. We still have yet to see Tariq Cohen so far this season. Couple that with the Bears' injuries. Couple that with a bad offensive system that has proven to not be consistent and not yield any consistency of this offense. You have an offense that looks like the Chicago Bears offense right now. This Bears offense is not very good and is not to be trusted. Even though Justin Fields' development has been a beautiful thing in progress, every week he is getting better. The last drive against Pittsburgh was a wonderful drive. I'm not going to go deep into that. I went into that on my reaction. You guys can check that out. The development of Justin Fields, he is starting to become the guy that we drafted at number 11 overall. The Bears offense needs a rebuild, and Matt Nagy is not the guy for Justin Fields in this offense if they want Fields to reach his potential going forward. So what we've learned from the Bears offense these first 9 weeks. Number one, the running game is the absolute identity of this Bears offense. Number two, could it be, if Dalton doesn't injure his knee, could he be possibly still starting now? And 3, we've learned that it is time for an offensive rebuild with the Bears. Even though it's been a lot of injury, it is time for an offensive rebuild with the Bears. Speaking on the Bears defensively, this defense started out the season, the first couple of games, playing some really good football. Now, we know the Rams game was not necessarily their best. They had some coverage blunders. Week 2 against Cincy, I think, was their best game this season. Week 3 against Cleveland, they played solidly, but the offense couldn't do a thing. For this Bears defense, it's kind of inconsistent like the offense, even though it's been more on the positive side, as the Bears have been really getting pressure out to the quarterback. Khalil Mack, despite the injuries, has played really well. Robert Quinn has had an absolute resurgence from what we seen last year from him. He's playing his best football in a Bears uniform, despite the COVID diagnosis. He's come back and he's played some solid football. Eddie Goldman, I think, as the season is starting to go on, he's starting to get his legs under him. He's starting to pick things up. Akeem Hicks has been in and out of the lineup with injuries. Roquan Smith, let's just face it, he's definitely a top-tier middle linebacker in this league. Ogletree, when you watch him, he's starting to become a little bit of a steal. I'm not saying he's the greatest thing, but that was a really good pickup, especially with Trevathan dealing with injuries of his own. And I think the Achilles heel for this Bears defense has been the secondary. Jalen Johnson has been solid. Vildor, Shelley, Jackson at times, Gibson at times have had their inconsistencies in coverage. Now, we know Eddie Jackson is a better player in coverage than he is in the run game, but in the run game, he has not been making those tackles. He has not been making tackles. And that is the thing consistently with this Bears defense. Tackling has been inconsistent. Tackling has been inconsistent throughout the course of this entire season with this Bears defense. Now, the past couple of weeks, the defense is the wheels are starting to fall off a little bit, even though there has been injuries. But I think schematically, teams are starting to figure out ways that they can attack this Bears defense. Now you have Tampa, who just obliterated us. Aaron Rodgers, the Bears did a solid job against the Packers for the most part. They just could not make the necessary stops in crunch time when they needed to. Then you go back over periods of this 4-game losing streak. San Francisco, the Bears got absolutely obliterated. This past week against Pittsburgh, an offense who has kind of been some rhythm, but it's still not the same Pittsburgh Steelers offense that we've been used to seeing. They got exposed. This 4-game losing streak has proved that this Bears defense is starting to get figured out. Even though we've had injuries, this Bears defense is starting to get figured out. Now, we do have injuries to Eddie Jackson with this hamstring, Khalil Mack with the foot, Robert Quinn and COVID. We have Akeem Hicks with the groin. Tashawn Gibson has missed some time. And Trevathan has missed some time. The Bears defensively, I think the scheme is there, but I think the defense is starting to show a little bit of his age, and they're starting to get a little bit older in the tooth, and it's showing. And it does not mesh when you have a little bit of an aging defense with higher contracts with a younger offense that is still developing. This Bears defense and Sean Desai, I'm not surprised that Sean Desai has found ways to get after the quarterback, that he's found a way to get Robert Quinn to play up to that 5-year, $75 million contract that the Bears signed him to in 2020. And Khalil Mack has been playing well, even though I would like to see a little bit more from Bilal Nichols. Tonga has been very impressive as a rookie in that front seven. So there are some bright spots with this Bears defense. There are some bright spots. But some of the holes in this Bears defense is starting to show. Whether it's been injuries or whether it's been guys getting a little bit older in the tooth, the holes are starting to show. Another bright spot has been Travis Gibson. Even though he's been a little bit inconsistent as of late, the Bears defensively, with Travis Gibson playing solid football, I think is a really big steal from that 2020 NFL draft. I just think Travis Gibson is starting to develop into a player who could be productive in your defense. Now, this Bears defense, it's been inconsistent all season. It has some good points, and then it's had some real low moments. I think the Bears' problem this year has been their ability to get it all together. Games like Cleveland, games like Tampa Bay, games, let's say like Green Bay, even San Francisco, and at some points against Pittsburgh, the Rams, the Bears have not been able to put it all together. Even in their wins, especially I want to say against Cincinnati, the Bears haven't really put it all together and played a complete game of football yet all season long. And this is why the Bears stand at 3-6 as we speak right now. They have not been able to play complementary football all season. It has not been consistent complementary football. And when you're a football team that is, I believe the Bears are not a playoff team. They are not a playoff team. So I'm not going to get my hopes up and think the Bears are going to make the playoffs. It's just not there. Things that I would love to see going forward for this Bears team. The first and foremost, we would like to see the development of Justin Fields. I think the way this season has gone throughout the first 9 weeks, I think the season has come down to the improvement and the development of Justin Fields. This Bears team is not a playoff team. So why now just started to look into developing and keep continuing the progress of Justin Fields? Because at the end of the day, he is the quarterback of your future. He is the quarterback of your future. Despite winning and losing games, which of course as Bear fans, we want them all to be W's, but we have to reel it in, take a step back and be honest with ourselves. This season is more about the developing of Justin Fields at this point. Number 2, it is time for the Bears to scout some of their younger players, and it's time for the Bears to really start to look at what value they can get from their veterans, because it's time for a rebuild. I previously made a video on why I really think it's time for the Bears to start to rebuild this football team. Start to analyze your veterans, see how much they have left for football, and see what value looking forward that they can get for them this off season. Because this Bears team, as constructed now, it's not a playoff team. It's going to be a competitive team, but even if they keep the same team next year, it's not a playoff team. And I think the third thing for the Bears to be more important going into the next few weeks of this season is just play hard competitive football. Because when you play hard competitive football and solid football, you can steal games from good teams. You can steal wins from good teams. Staying to your game plan, staying to what works best, sticking to it, and not deviating away from what your strengths are, you can steal games from competitive teams. So I'm looking for this Bears team to fight hard. The development of not only Justin Fields, but the development of a lot of your young core pieces, as in Khalil Herbert, Darnell Mooney, guys like Jalen Johnson, Travis Gibson. Of course, we still have Roquan. Of course, we need to see Tariq Cohen back, David Montgomery, and Tevin Jenkins, Larry Borom. Really start to develop your young guys. Not just Fields, but the rest of your young pieces that are going to be there for years to come. Start developing your young core now. Because you're not a playoff team, you have to see what you have in your core. You have to see what you have in the players that you've drafted with their picks in the draft. You have to see what you have in for your future. That is all I have for you guys. I know this video might be longer than what I anticipated, but I had a lot to say. But make sure you guys leave this video a like and comment your thoughts down below. What do you think of this Bears team this season? Where do you think they're at? What do you think about the games earlier this year? And what do you think of this Bears team going forward this season? Leave your thoughts in the comment section down below. I would love to see what you guys think. And also, as always, click that subscribe button and notification bell so you will not miss a single video that I post. But I am APW Sports signing out. Make sure you guys stay safe. Have a great and excellent day, and I'll catch you guys in the next vid. Peace.